Hello, STEM girlies. Welcome back to Computer Science, the podcast that connects ambitious and driven people just like you guys to the trailblazing women of STEM. I hope you all are having a wonderful 2025 so far and are staying nice and warm. I'm extremely excited to welcome our next guest of the year, Michelle Weon. Currently studying computer science and economics at Harvard University, Michelle is here to share her incredible journey, experiences, and insights. So, whether you're exploring a career in STEM or looking for inspiration, this episode is packed with wisdom you won't want to miss. Let's dive right in. So, Michelle, thank you so much for being here. Could you start by sharing with our viewers a little bit about yourself, your work, and what you're specifically studying in college this year?
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me and letting me join you on this podcast. So, right now, I'm a first year at Harvard and I'm studying computer science with a secondary in economics. Last semester, I took vector calculus and linear algebra, microeconomics, expository writing, and an intro to computer science, which is the famous CS50, and I am very glad to talk more about that. I'm originally from a small rural town in Virginia, about an hour away from DC, and I grew up on a mushroom farm called Wanchon Mushroom Farm, and if you guys are in the area, you guys should definitely check it out. Some of the club work that I did at school was I joined a group called Global Alliance for Medical Innovation, and they had a chapter at Harvard. And basically, there I led a project where we helped diagnose neurodegenerative diseases by having patients draw specific shapes on a tablet, and our machine learning algorithm helped clinicians decide whether or not the patients have Parkinson's, essential tremors, or if they're clean. And there are many other projects that Harvard supported. So, for example, there was another project that my team and I conducted, which was called Veritas GPT. And there we were making a chatbot where students could ask what their 4-year roadmap in college would be based on their specific major and interests. So, those are a few examples of the work that I did while I was at school so far.
That is amazing. So, you said you would talk a little bit more about CS50. We would love for you to share a little bit about that course. So, how are you liking it? And what do you think was some of the most key things that you learned, or maybe the style of the course? Because I know CS50 is so famous and so many people do it. So, what are some of the coolest things that you've liked about this course so far?
Yeah, so CS50 was amazing when I took it. David Malin is the professor, and he's the best lecturer, ever. And he's just very concise and, he really knows what he's talking about. And the whole community around CS50 is really nice to have, especially in your first, year in college, because there's so many people who are taking it, and there's so many freshmen who are also taking it, so you can just relate with a lot of people. And if you want to get your first taste in computer science, CS50 is a super broad course and it gives you a taste of virtually everything. So it's a really good introductory course in computer science, and I would highly recommend taking it virtually. And it's free on the internet called CS50X.
So, how did your journey in computer science begin? Was there a moment when you realized, yes, this is the field I want to pursue?
I realized that computer science would be the way to go after I realized that I have a natural affinity towards puzzles, math, and tech. And then when I took a programming class in high school, that just affirmed my realization, because when I programmed in high school, I really enjoyed it. I started out with just basic Scratch, which is block coding, and then that moved on to Python, and then that moved on to Java and C++.
Awesome. So you took a coding class or club in high school, right? So with all the progress that we've made in society, the gender gap still remains. And whether you're in a CS class, CS club in high school or college, the number of girls compared to the guys in the room is still very few. And so for a lot of girls, it can be hard to stay confident being outnumbered in that room. So what are some of the strategies that you've developed or tips that you would give somebody to kind of find their confidence and stand up for themselves and just have their voices be heard in a room like that?
Yeah, it definitely happens, and it's really scary to just experience that, especially if you're not used to being in a outnumbered room. And my advice for that would be to know your voice and speak up. So do your research, stay educated, And if you know what you're talking about, you need to act like it. And people will listen to you if you talk with confidence. And if you have to, you can fake it till you make it because if you start faking it, then people will start listening to you, and then that will in turn build your confidence and help you build your voice. So just knowing that you have that voice will help you speak up with this gender gap still in the room.
For sure. So, building on this, what qualities do you think are essential for achieving success in STEM fields?
Honestly, in any STEM field, I think you should just explore as many different interests that you have because in the STEM field, there's not just computer science, there's engineering, there's math, there's chem, there's biology, there's just so many different fields. And in order to find your passion, you just need to start trying out like as many different things as you can. So try out different classes, try doing different research, try doing different projects, and then when you find something that really piques your interest, then just try to go further and further into that subject.
Definitely, if you don't try things, you might never know when you like them. Any amount of success that you achieve, failures and challenges are bound to come, right? You mentioned exploring different things. When you do explore them, you might have downfalls and backfalls. So, could you share a time when you faced a significant obstacle in your journey and how you overcame that?
Yeah. So honestly, as like a Harvard student, you might think that I've never like I don't know, failed in a class and stuff. Just because like that's what the stereotype is. That's how the stereotype is. But in first, what is it, like first grade or something, I got like a 34% on one of my math tests. And I don't even know why that happened and like what was going on in my head. But that just was kind of like a interesting oh wait, no, sorry, that was not first grade. That was like 5th grade. But that was like at the later stages of elementary school. So I was starting to know what was happening with the world. I was starting to grow up a little bit. And then I just like didn't want to study one day, I guess. And then I took a test in math and it was like about powers or something. But then like when the day came, I did not even know what a power was. And then I got that 34 and I had to show it to my mom. It was really, really rough, but then I think that just kind of taught me a little bit more discipline and then from like an earlier age. And like that also just goes to show like just because you fail like one test or like one assignment or one project, like that does not define who you are at all. And that just goes to show that you have a lot more room to grow. So you should not feel like you're taken aback if your GPA takes a hit or if you don't feel like this is going to work out when you just first try it out.
Definitely, like take failures as a stepping stone and learn from them. So that is so true. And thank you for sharing that story. Um, Next, could you talk about your high school years a little bit? So, high school years for everyone can be incredibly formative. So, what's an opportunity that you leveraged during high school that you think helped shape who you are today?
So honestly, I feel like I can only thank my family and my friends and the professors who helped me along the way during my high school career because they were the ones who really gave me the opportunities to grow and pushed me to grow when I felt like I couldn't get up anymore and I couldn't do it anymore and I just did not have the motivation. And I'm especially grateful to my parents just because, unlike the, again, very stereotypical Asian immigrant parents, and usually immigrant parents, they like say, like, you have to be a doctor or like you have to be a lawyer and you have to study this, you have to be this certain way. But I'm very grateful that they never pressured me into doing that and they let me choose what I wanted to do. And I chose computer science and I chose that I like wanted to go to a good college and it wasn't because I wanted their validation and it was all like intrinsic. And I'm really glad that they let me do that. And I think that was one of the opportunities that really helped shape who I am.
Like, that's amazing. So with the whole college experience and the busyness that comes with college, and even I'm sure you've been quite busy in high school, how do you balance your time between university, work, extracurriculars, and your personal and social life?
So Google Calendar was my saving grace in college because last semester was pretty rough just like finding my place in college and then getting used to the whole schedule of it because in high school I feel like you always have a structure that you go by and I didn't realize how dependent I was on that structure but then when I got to college I only go to class like a couple times a week and then the rest of the time is free time, I guess, and then, like, you eat, you have meals, but then those are also not structured in. So then Google Calendar really helped me figure out, like, the structure in my days because it let me block out my days by the hour and then organize my assignments and carve out time for problem sets, extracurriculars, and social time so that I don't get burnt out, and also let me carve out time for sleep and the gym because you have to prioritize your health when you're in college and when you're studying because that's easily neglected and you just really can't forget that.
A Google Calendar is so cool. I love that so much too. And it's so nice to be able to see how your day is broken up and, by the hour, planning it out definitely helps a lot. So thank you for sharing that. And then could you now talk a little bit about some of the internships or leadership roles you've taken on during high school and early college? And how did they shape your path?
Yeah. So in high school, I led like 6 different clubs, and 4 out of the 6 I founded myself because there weren't that many selections in the high school that I went to. And no shade, but like we were in a smaller rural high school, and
Mhm.
so most people did sports, and less people were focused on like academic extracurriculars. And so as someone who is more focused on the academic side, I wanted more selection, and I understood that other people were who were like me also struggle from the same lack of diversity in our selections. So then I wanted to give back to the community. And so I founded the math club, the honor society, and the science clubs, and just different computer science and technology clubs. And after doing that, I gained a lot of leadership skills, and that also taught me to take initiative for the problems around me. And as for internships, I did an internship at a local aerospace research company in like Warrenton, Virginia, called Spark Research. And that was during like my senior year and the summer after senior year. And I would say that was where I got my first taste of working in the industry because programming in class was like very different from programming in the real world.
I'm
And
sure.
yeah, I don't know why, but I was really surprised when that happened, and I realized that programming in class is really just a stepping stool for programming at work, because at work, there's no clear solution for what you're doing, because in, like, problem sets, they're like, "Okay, you want to program this, and then you start with this," and everyone gets similar solutions, but then at work, there is no clear solution, you just have to start being innovative and then try multiple different solutions. And yeah, I think that really helped shape like where I am now.
So you said you founded 4 clubs in high school and led 6 different clubs in high school. That is so cool. Which club do you think was your favorite, and why do you think that?
That's a good question. Honestly, the math club was my first club, so I have that holds a really special place in my heart just because it was the first one, and then I was the most scared doing that one because it was really out of my comfort zone. Like if you told me that I was going to start a club, like, my freshman year of high school, I, like, would not have believed you at all because that's just really something that I wouldn't have done in freshman year and very just out of character because don't really like I didn't like putting myself out there and putting a club and then getting a bunch of people to know about your club and joining it is kind of like, brings a lot of attention on yourself. So that was a very, like, personal journey for me, and the math club is very special to me now.
Uh-huh, it can definitely be quite scary when you're first starting a club. So this year, actually, I started a club which holds coding hackathons for girls in elementary and middle schools. And starting that up, kicking it off the ground, finding people that are going to be on your leadership team, and then marketing your club can be quite risky and feel quite risky at first. So that is great. You started a club in freshman year. Amazing. And then this is a recurring question among a lot of our viewers. So everyone has big dreams and everyone wants to do all these cool activities, lead amazing clubs, but resisting the temptation to spend full blocks of time on our phones is a struggle for many. So what are some tips you would give to your younger self for prioritizing getting work done and blocking out time?
So I still struggle with, like, being on my phone at times, and I still find myself doom scrolling or rotting in my bed during break while I could be doing much more productive things. But I found that going out to a cafe or library, and giving yourself a change in environment can help me focus on the task at hand. And I also use this app called One Sec, that makes me breathe for 1 minute whenever I click into Instagram. So it gets rid of the immediate dopamine gratification that I get from Instagram. And I found that that helps a lot for me because that makes me think about not going into Instagram like when I first open my phone or when I first wake up in the morning. And then that gratification, when that gratification goes away, then I am not so clung onto my phone. And then that makes me start going out and doing more, again, productive things. Also, can you tell me more about the club with hackathons? Because that sounds really cool.
Of course. So we host coding hackathons, and participants get to come in. So these are elementary and middle schoolers, right? So we're really focused on building community of coding and starting that up from a young age because that carries forward as you get older and then into college. And so they come in, they build an app or a website on a social issue that's revealed the day of. So it could be things such as mental health, environmental sustainability, food security, things like that. And they build an app, they work in teams, and then they pitch that app. So it's Shark Tank style as well. So they're not only learning how to code, but also how to communicate their code. And then they'll pitch that app and there'll be judges there. So it's a really great experience for the little kids. And I'm so glad that I've gotten friends in high school that are doing this with me and we've put together a whole community. So that is the club.
That
And then
sounds amazing.
thank you so much. I was gonna say, I love that you mentioned using apps for instant gratification because I feel like a lot of the times when you're opening up apps on your phone, it's you don't even want to scroll. It's just mindless because you're bored. Our brains are just looking for like something to put our eyes on. So apps, like you said, 1 sec. I use an app called ScreenGen, and then I know there's so many different apps out there. That's a huge, huge tip for definitely like slowing yourself down and being like, hey, do I actually want to scroll or not? So thanks for mentioning that. And then, Michelle, you've done a lot of work with artificial intelligence in high school. So I know you've done work in Inspirit AI and researched at George Mason University. So could you talk a little bit about both of these experiences, what you did in these internships, and how they shaped your computer science journey?
Yeah, so both experiences allow me to really deep dive into AI and then conduct real research on them because at first I always just heard these buzzwords like machine learning, artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, OpenAI, but then I never really got to know like the nitty-gritty of what's behind them until I did this research myself. And so Inspire AI and the research that I did at George Mason University were both held by programs, and so there was a lot of mentorship from like MIT undergrad students, Harvard undergrad students, and like Stanford undergrad students for Inspire AI. And then at George Mason University, I received some mentorship from like Shenandoah University professors and then my professor at my high school program. And so through that, through like reaching out for higher support, I was able to go farther in my research and I was able to use different resources that I would not have known about before. Because, for example, I wouldn't have known about like Hugging Face and Kaggle, and those are really useful in just getting started in artificial intelligence and building your own AI. Because building your own AI, um, depending on where you start, can be definitely difficult and it can feel kind of all over the place if you're not focused on one solution and you're not focused on what you're trying to accomplish. So both of those experiences really helped me figure out what I want to do in computer science, and I was interested in computer science AI at first, but those experiences really affirmed that I want to go into the machine learning field.
Oh, so that's really cool. And I'm sure our viewers are wondering this because I'm wondering this as well. What type of programs were these through? So, did you find these programs through your school or were they through networking? And what programs were they called?
In Spirit AI was something that I just found online, I think, because in high school, when I was applying to colleges, I really wanted to get research and I also wanted to get research to put like on my resume because I know that research is very important for applications. And so I was like a fiend for these programs. Like I really wanted to get into some research program and I wanted like a computer science research program because I knew that that was what I was attracted to and that was what I really wanted to do. So then when I got into Inspirit AI, they just showed me they had a bunch of workout workshops where they taught us about large language models, and then they showed us computer vision, and they showed us object detection, and they showed us a bunch of different things that like define machine learning and like what happens behind AI, and they showed us how it works. And then at the end of the workshops, they gave us like about a month or so to just work on the projects ourselves and then use what we learned from the workshops. And at George Mason University, that was through a program called, wait, let me think really hard. It was called Shenandoah Valley Computer Science Research Partnership. And so I found that one out through my high school professor, and that was my computer science teacher, and he taught me computer science for 2 years, and he was an amazing professor for one, but for two, he was really good at finding resources and networking and showing me like all of his students. And so one year he just talked about this one Shenandoah program. And so again, since I was a fiend for these programs, I was like, yeah, for sure. Like I definitely want to try it out. And then that let me research at George Mason University. But if you don't have these opportunities around you, then I really encourage you to just reach out to your local community college professor or your local college professor by like cold emailing, because people all started in your shoes and they know how it feels to start out feeling like you know not that much about the subject, and they will help you out. And if they don't, then um, honestly, just like keep trying and don't get discouraged. And if you don't want to do that, then you can find a bunch of programs online. Some are free, some are paid. But honestly, I would say that even if they are paid, it's worth the money because Inspire AI was some money and it was very influential in my computer science journey.
Amazing. I love that you knew what you wanted and you sought opportunities that aligned with those needs, and that is incredible. So, thank you for sharing about those experiences. And then I have one last question. So, this does bring us to the last question of the podcast. What advice would you give a young girl just starting to dip her feet into the STEM fields and into computer science? Like, if this was a younger version of yourself, what would you tell them to accelerate their journey?
I guess I would say, I think I touched on this a lot earlier, but I would really emphasize to explore, reach out for help, and try to embrace your passion. And the only way that you can really find your passion is by exploring exploring a bunch of different things. And for me, I would say if I was talking to my younger self, I would just tell her that like everything would be okay in the end. Don't be so afraid of like failure and what might happen if you do fall, and just try to go for everything that you can, anything that you can put your hands on. And then if you don't end up liking it, that's completely fine. That's completely human. And if it's not meant for you, then you can let go of it and then make time for new things. So if you're young and you're starting out in STEM, just join clubs, take as many different classes as you can, talk to people. And this is a really great podcast because you're already starting to like network and you're already starting to get these resources by just on this podcast. So this is already a great step into your STEM field. So honestly, if you're here, then this is a great part of your journey. And I hope that wherever you are, you guys do very well, and I'm rooting for you.
Yes, for sure. Thank you. So try everything, be bold, and be outgoing. I love that. A huge thank you to you, Michelle, for being so open and authentic with us today. So, this does bring us to the end of this podcast. Your stories, tips, and anecdotes were absolutely inspiring, and it was such a privilege to have you on Computer Science. To all our listeners, thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, share this episode with your friends, and leave us a review. It helps us connect more ambitious girls to amazing STEM role models. And like Michelle said, when you're on this podcast, you learn so many different things from real life examples of people that have achieved what you want to achieve. So this is a great start. And until next time, keep reaching for the stars and chasing those dreams. See you soon on Computer Science.